HOA is pulling some seriously strange and seemingly nefarious stunts. Can you guys give me any insights? Posted by Real Estate Toss. I'm a first-time homebuyer running into some seriously weird issues with an HOA and curious about the legality of some of the stunts that they're pulling. I'm a veteran using the VA loan. Nothing is closed yet, but things are getting close enough to start worrying. Sorry for the long post, but there's a lot to question. My partner and I are purchasing a condo unit in Chicago. We've already agreed to a price with the seller, and our lender has approved the loan. The appraisal and the inspection are both completed as well. When it came time to drop off some money orders to the front office, we started seeing some serious problems. The building manager was great, up until we handed her the sales contract and the number for money down was still blank. Our lender told us to leave this blank for the time being just so VA loan stuff could clear, and it didn't need to be there until way closer to closing anyway. Here's where the fun starts. The building manager asked what our loan to value was rather quickly, and we were stumped because, as newbies, we aren't great with a lot of terms. We told her we were doing a VA loan, and she immediately snaps back with, "Oh, so do you have the 20 months of assessment fees available to pay?" We had absolutely no idea what she was talking about and let her know that. She prints off page 22 and 23 of their 40-page HOA rulebook and shows us a clause buried in there where if you put down 0%, you owe 20 months of assessment fees. She did some quick math to show that we would end up owing just shy of what a 10% down payment would look like. She also included 2 parking spots and cable and internet. The parking spots are on a wait list, and we were like 8 spots down, so she pulled those numbers right out of thin air. And the cable and internet, it's already on the assessment fee, and she listed it again. So I'm feeling like it's pretty obvious that she's trying to just scare us off. It doesn't end there. She's also requesting that we each file a credit report through a company that they use. Again, after we've already been through this with our lender and bank and received credit scores from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I asked if they could just get this from our lender since it's, well, already been done, and I was given a stern no, that it has to be through this specific company. They gave us a number, an extension, and asked for this name. For what it's worth, both of our credit scores, well, they're very good. Certainly more than sufficient for this place. They've also requested that the next HOA board meeting they have, that we meet them remotely so they can basically interview us, and it sounds like they're going to approve us moving in. The 20 months of assessment payments were provided in the HOA rulebook that they gave us, but we didn't receive it at the beginning when we were discussing with the seller. It was also buried in an email with a total of 63 PDFs, only one of which was the rulebook. Everything else was just cover pages, meeting minutes, small potatoes, and nothing pages. No one except the HOA was aware of this 20-month assessment fee. Not us, not our realtor, our lawyer, lender, the seller's broker, the seller's lawyer. Nobody had a clue until we told them the building manager hit us with it, and everyone's arguing that this fee should have been front and center. Also, none of us, seller's side included, have ever heard of such a clause, and we're all in agreement that it sounds absolutely insane. Our lender told us to just basically tell them to kick rocks on having our credit hit again for their report, as this is a pretty bad thing to do during a major purchase. If they want credit scores, they can get them from him, if he even deems it necessary. Our realtor suspects that voting in people in the building sounds like something that a co-op does and doubts this is even legal. Our lawyer is looking into how they got around this being a form of discrimination. So I'm wondering, has anyone seen anything like this? How can we even hack this apart? Is this stuff even legal? Even if we beat these fees, what are the odds that the HOA just messes with us the entire time we're there? It isn't too late to back out and cut our losses, but it's getting way too close to let it go. These comments are perfect. Imagine if you bought this place and then needed to sell it in a tight market. Would you want these people scaring away your potential buyers? If I was a condo owner, I'd be ticked. Honestly, if you can walk away from this BS, you should. They are letting you know up front that they are going to be difficult at best to deal with, and there's no parking. Walk away. When Evil Mama Bear tried to restart the HOA, posted by Craigle Tom. Now, the neighborhood my mother's house is in had an HOA that was disbanded in the early 90s for the pretty stereotypical reasons: corrupt leaders, misappropriation of funds, and so on. I really don't have many details on it since I was very little when it went down, but my mother had apparently been openly aiming for a seat on the HOA council for years, so she was really sore when the HOA was gone because she could no longer run for a position. Fast forward to 1999. Evil Mama Bear had been trying to quote the old HOA covenants to the neighborhood for years and insisted that the rules and regulations set forth when the HOA was active should still be abided by. Literally, no one wanted to listen to her. So my mother started putting flyers around the neighborhood that detailed that she was restarting the HOA without their approval and would be its first new president. The neighbors ended up in an uproar over this and showed up to her public meeting. And there, she was verbally ripped to shreds as nearly every single homeowner in the neighborhood not only denied their support of another HOA, but also made it clear to her what she was trying to do was not legal. My mother was incensed by this, and no surprise, she didn't even have my father's support, which was something that she'd initially been counting on. But he refused from the onset of her scheme. And when the neighborhood all refused to recreate the HOA, Evil Mama Bear went off on my dad for not being supportive of her. After she gaslighted herself into nearly being out of breath, my dad told her she was just looking for a way to lord over the neighborhood, and he'd never support that. She tried to argue with him some more, but he just ended the conversation and walked away. Somehow, that still didn't stop my mother, though. She went and contacted a sleazy lawyer about trying to get the HOA running again without the support of the residents. Her hope was that there was some sort of law that could reactivate the HOA on different grounds. The lawyer went through all of the old HOA documents and state laws over a couple of days and told my mother there was nothing that could be done as it was not enforceable, and that without the consent and signed support of enough people in the neighborhood, there was no way to legally restart the HOA. Then proceeded to bill Evil Mama Bear for the time he spent looking through all of that. Since my mother hired the sleazy lawyer herself under the table, she had to pay him. But she hated paying anyone for anything because she was so cheap. Now, an important fact of note was that my dad hadn't trusted Evil Mama Bear with his money for years and no longer kept joint bank accounts with her. And so she had no way to access his money. So she filed for a new credit card using his name and then used said credit card to pay the lawyer instead. My dad noticed a new credit card statement in his name pretty fast and nearly filed for fraud when my mother came clean out of fear. He demanded she pay off the credit card and then have said card deactivated. My mother didn't want to, but he threatened to call the fraud department of his bank on her. I still remember hearing the argument where she tried to claim that he couldn't do that because they were married and that everything that was his was also hers. That meant that she could do what she did and he'd still have to pay. Dad called BS on that and said that he'd contest the charges and get the card removed from his name, which would have left my mother in some serious legal trouble for fraud and debt collection. And so, Evil Mama Bear begrudgingly paid off the money owed, and my dad cut the card to little pieces with scissors. My mother had the money to pay the lawyer all along. She just preferred to keep the cash and put any expenses she could on my father. But he always stopped her, and she tried to pull the shared assets logic because they were married, though that ended when they divorced. Evil Mama Bear still spent the next few years trying to quote the HOA covenants to neighbors, but she was always dismissed or laughed at every single time she tried. A few people started referring to her as President Wannabe. To this day, no HOA has formed in the neighborhood again, and even if one did, they'd never vote in Evil Mama Bear. I can only imagine what would happen if she tried to pull this crap in Texas after she moves there. Now, I've had a few people messaging me that the lawyer I spoke of in the story that my mother went to wasn't sleazy just by association with my mother and just did what normal lawyers do. Well, he was known by reputation to overcharge people, and my own lawyer told me some time ago that he had first-hand experience with the sleazy lawyer because he knew him in person. The guy would intentionally take longer than needed to do anything so he could charge more time from clients. That, among other shady things he did, bit him in the butt some years ago, and he shut down his office. Mom takes down the HOA from the inside, posted by Quiet Fangirl. My neighborhood does not have a homeowners association, at least not anymore. When my parents first moved in, my older sibling, maybe 2 years old and with me as a little glowworm, there was an HOA. They took money from the neighborhood in exchange for their services. At first, and for quite a while, my parents just kind of shrugged it off. The HOA shoveled the snow off the streets in the winter, and they dealt with trash collection, so they were doing something worthwhile, right? Haha, no. The city controlled the snowplows and the garbage trucks, not the HOA. But still, there was the illusion of effort. And besides, one summer, they decided to contact a company to plant new trees all over the neighborhood. The fact that the company was owned by the son of the head of the HOA was totally coincidental. The trees were the beginning of the end for the HOA. Why? Well, my grandmother on my dad's side was visiting when they came around to plant the trees. My grandma, who is a certified master gardener. And so, she stared through the windows of our house as the guys planting the trees just dropped the saplings on the grass, still with their roots inside the bag that they came in. No holes dug, no holes cut, just a bagged sapling lying on the grass like a pathetic, sad little stick. The saplings laid there all night. No one came back to actually do their job and plant them. My master gardener grandma mentioned offhand that those saplings were going to die unless they got in the soil. And something clicked in my mom's head. She was paying the HOA money, actual money, every month while both she and my dad worked, taking care of 2 very little kids, sending us to daycare and preschool and arranging babysitters and feeding us. And the homeowners association was just gonna pull this half-butt bullcrap instead of do what she's paying them for? No freaking way. So she showed up to the head of the HOA's house and basically demanded that the trees get planted properly, like she's apparently paying for them to do. The head of the HOA, so excited for someone actually caring about the neighborhood, made their second mistake. They asked if Mom wanted to join the HOA. She agreed. The trees were planted, but most didn't make it. My grandma was right. First things first, my mom showed up to the next HOA meeting. There were like 5 people there. No wonder they asked Mom to join. They desperately needed the people. So Mom looked at this collection of white people, herself included, who weren't even paying money to the HOA like the rest of the neighborhood. All the contractors the HOA called in were close relatives of other HOA members, and they weren't paid by the HOA. After all, they're family. So my mom started digging. She spent pretty much a full summer taking down the HOA before she had to go back to teaching in the fall. With me carted along after her and my sibling old enough to be in school or daycare, she dug through the years of paperwork detailing the HOA's financial situation. And she found something extremely enlightening. The HOA didn't actually do anything. Well, they didn't do anything to the benefit of the community. Everything they claimed to do was either covered by the individual homeowner or by the city itself. So they were collecting money from all the neighborhood residents under false pretenses. And actually, they weren't even supposed to be in our neighborhood. Their association zone was a whole different neighborhood. So, what is a working mother of 2 small children to do while her husband is off at work and she's off for the summer? She goes door to door with pamphlets, me and my sibling in a stroller, as she weaves her way through the neighborhood blocks, pamphlets explaining the situation and how to stop paying for services you'll never get. Pamphlets that are, of course, written in both English and Spanish to account for the high amount of Latino and Hispanic people in our neighborhood. And naturally, she got a lawyer and an accountant. It put a major dent in her pocket, but if it meant the entire neighborhood wasn't exploited for money each month, it was worth every penny. Another HOA member helped her sift through the documents and the data and pass out pamphlets and encourage people to show up to the meetings, but had to back out because of work-related reasons. My mom rolled up to the courthouse, flanked by the lawyer and the accountant, her kids safe at home with her husband, and had more than enough evidence to get the Homeowners Association the heck out of her neighborhood, expose the fraudsters for the frauds they were, and make sure that no HOA would ever push their luck in our neighborhood. It's been almost 19 years, and no one's even tried making another homeowners association in our neighborhood. Is OP screwed? $0 in HOA reserves, posted by Smoke Ride and get paid. Question: how screwed are we? The backstory: we purchased our townhome in our hometown in California in April 2022 when it was an insane market. By the time we received the HOA disclosures, we had been well underway with the escrow. We reviewed the financial stuff and saw that they only had $27,000 in reserves budgeted for the fiscal year ending 6/30/22. We really liked the place, and this was our 20th offer, so we decided to continue with escrow since we were already so deep in, and like I said before, the market was just nuts. I've tried to be involved and informed from the start. There has been a total of 2 board meetings since we've been here in April 2022. The first one I attended was a super awkward 5 to 10 minute Zoom call cut short due to drama between the HOA board and the old property management company. The other meeting I stupidly did not attend because I misunderstood the meeting notice and thought it was for the board only. I'm still learning the ins and outs of the HOA. Anyway, so long story short, I just found out that we have nothing in reserves. From property management, they said, see attached income statement for the month of February. You will see that the association has no money. I don't know where the membership would expect the association to get money to make repairs, like roof replacement, drywall, decks, and so on, that so many units needed due to the crazy rain we just had. A fully funded reserve for an association of your size with the components that are the association's responsibility is approximately $350,000, and at the very least, you should have over $100,000. As of this email, after paying for the mini deck repairs that were done in the complex due to the rain, the association has $203.93 in the reserve account, with $14,735 in pending bills to be paid for roof repairs. The balance of the operating account, which is where the monthly assessments are deposited and the monthly bills are paid, currently has a balance of $3,740.98. If we have no money, how long is it going to take us to build a reserve of $100 to $350,000? Decades, right? Gosh. So I think it is what it is. I can get on the board, even though my job is very demanding and home life with a toddler is bonkers. I think it would be best if I volunteered to be on the board. The president already asked me twice. Commenter drops the answer. Usually when this happens, it's shortly followed by an increase in HOA dues. The amount of increase will depend on how many houses are in your development and what your reserve goal is. In your case, it sounds like you may be seeing a few $100 increase in HOA fees. HOA forcing me to paint a second time, posted by Garlic J's my dad. December 23rd, yes, 2 days before Christmas, my HOA served me a notice stating that I had 2 weeks to repaint my house as the colors were fading. I didn't have the cash or the time to have it done in 2 weeks, so I asked for an extension, which the HOA denied. I somehow found a painter that had an opening just after the notice expired, and the HOA agreed to let it slide. My wife looked for colors all day, and I emailed the swatches to the HOA for approval. They approved the new colors, and the painter started work shortly after. I spent my entire savings and had to work extra to cover the painter, but they did a good job and we were happy with the results. Now, a week later, the HOA has given us a notice that the color of the house is not the color that was approved, so it must be returned to the original colors. After some investigating by me, the color on the walls turned out to be a bit bluer than the grayish blue swatches would lead you to think. It's still a nice color, so I asked the HOA to just approve of these colors instead, to which they denied. My question is, what can I do about this? I feel as if I'm being targeted for no reason. The HOA just repeats, please return the house to the original coloring whenever I contact them about this. I have nothing left to pay for a painter a second time, nor do I have the time or materials to paint the whole house myself. The HOA is not backing down on this judgment. Should I be getting lawyers involved? Anyone else been in a similar situation? I'm checking with my painter to see if they mixed up the paint somehow. I've been here for about a year, and my only other violation was a fence that needed power washing that I completed in a matter of days. I don't think anyone would be out to get me. I'm Latino, and I live in a primarily Black and Latino neighborhood. Only about 24 houses total. I'm going to request a formal hearing with the HOA. All of my communications with them have been very impersonal over email, so maybe after stating my case to them, they will understand. If they choose to escalate, I'll be getting a lawyer involved. I already have a friend doing a bit of digging. Commenter asked and OP answered. They approved in writing? If so, I tell them to get lost. And OP says they approved the color swatches from the manufacturer, but they disapproved of the color once they saw it on the walls. What would you do? Let me know. HOA lawsuit. We take the HOA to court over this, but we aren't even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you get the fallout of this crazy story. You won't want to miss it, and I'll see you there.